Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with something pretty darn cool. We have the very first round of Jurassic World Survival minifigures. It's kind of weird though, because clearly we have the survival artwork on it, but like we just skipped pretty much over Rebirth altogether when it comes to minis, and I don't understand why. Although at the same time, these are almost basically like Rebirth minis, because it seems like a lot of the dinosaurs are kind of geared toward Rebirth, so I don't know, kind of a mystery to me, but you can see the box art looks pretty cool. You can see again a really nice image here on the front, of course, of the Rex, just like we've seen on the last few Wild Roars. And then up here on the top, you can see a checklist basically that my camera doesn't want to focus on, showing off all of the different figures that are in this wave, some of which are new, some of which are not, so definitely exciting to have quite a few in this wave. As far as, you know, more exciting figures. I also want to give a massive shout out and thank you to my good buddy Luke Malone, who hooked me up with these guys. He did let me know that he had these at his local store, and then went ahead and did a little research to find out which ones were in which boxes, and scored me all of the ones I was looking for. So a massive thank you, as always, goes out to my buddy Luke again for being super cool and you know, grabbing these for me. But as far as which ones are in which boxes, so first of all, this is number 29 right here. So we're going to go ahead, pull this open, and then bring the figure out. And as we can see, the very first one is the brand new D-Rex Mini, which is definitely very exciting. Again, that means that, what box did I say that was, 29? Yes, so number 29 would be the D-Rex in this newest wave. And again, you of course get the little slip inside that does include that checklist, again showing off all of the different figures in this wave of minis. The next box is 36, so inside 36 we have the Tyrannosaurus Rex. So I know many people were kind of wondering if they were going to have the opportunity to get the T-Rex from Rebirth. Again, when it comes to the minis, maybe you didn't want to buy the actual pack that they came in originally, like those multi-packs, so you can still get it again in these minifigures here. I'm not entirely sure if that one is any different from the other versions that we've seen of it, but I am going to grab my other versions and bring it in here to compare in just a moment. And then when it comes to this one, you can see this is 33, so go ahead and cut that off, and then we'll see who's in 33. That would be the Spinosaurus. So as you can see, again, that very nice Rebirth style Spino. And again, we'll check to see if that one is any different from the multi-pack versions. And that would mean that this one, which is number 30, is going to include the other new figures for this set. And there you go. You can see who they are. It is the Ceratosuchops, which is definitely a really cool one to have in the line, and it just fell over, as well as the Spiclypeus, again, brand new species of ceratopsian to the minifigure line. So there we go. There is pretty much all of the new minis that are available in the newest wave, which is the first wave of Jurassic World Survival minis. And what's funny is, again, it comes in the survival packaging, but a lot of the figures are more so Rebirth, and none of them seem to actually be that kind of mutated style that we see with the rest of Jurassic World Survival. So, you know, basically, I don't know what's going on as far as these minis go, but they do look pretty fun, and especially when it comes to the really new ones, which would be the D-Rex, the Ceratosuchops, and Spiclypeus, those ones look really cool. So I'm going to go ahead, move them all out of here, readjust the camera, and we'll bring each one in one by one and take a look at them. So the first one we are going to take a look at is the D-Rex, because I'm very intrigued to see what this one looks like. And as we can see, the sculpt itself is excellent. It is gorgeous. Man, sometimes Mattel just absolutely nails it when it comes to their sculpts. And look at how really impressive and vibrant the actual fine detail and skin texture and everything is on this D-Rex. And what's cool about the mini version is it is still quite sizable, and of course also doesn't have any sort of like seams for the most part outside of the jaw, because we do have an articulated jaw for the figure. But again, it has the super impressive sculpt of Mattel giving you an extremely nice looking, very high quality D-Rex without a bunch of seams moving through it. This one would actually be really fun to repaint and kind of make look like the D-Rex in the film, which I definitely think I'm going to do once these do eventually show up in my area, whenever that may be. I'm going to have to grab an extra and give this one a new fresh coat of more realistic paint. But you can see, starting here in the head sculpt, it looks pretty nice. One thing I will say, though, is it kind of looks like the brownish tone here, which is meant to sort of circle around the eye, is definitely a little bit misplaced, but it is what it is. The primary body color is a light yellowish tone, and then you have kind of like a greenish brown sort of tone that moves along the top of the head, also kind of breaks up as you move down through the body, and that leads all the way out onto the tail. Not the entire way through, but fairly far out onto the tail. There's also a slight speckling that I can see here and there, but that's pretty rare, honestly, moving through the figure. Like, I don't see it a lot. Just every once in a while I see it. Again, with the articulated jaw, unfortunately, there isn't any paintwork or coloration for the inside of the mouth. There's also not much in the way of detail in there. We can see the tongue, but like not much on the inside of the mouth on the upper side. But it still looks pretty good, and the jaw works pretty nicely. The eye, or at least that darker tone that sort of circles the eye, looks a little bit better over here as far as its placement. Definitely looks a little bit nicer. Moving through the body, again, coloration-wise, there's nothing else going on, but sculpt-wise, it looks to be pretty much the same sculpt as the mainline D-Rex, just obviously shrunken down in much smaller form. The overall fine detail when it comes to like the musculature and everything looks really nice. The scoots moving down the toes, really vibrant. The claws actually have kind of a genuine sharp look to them, which is also really nice, considering the figure is really soft. Like, you can really flex it and move it all over the place. Even these little arms you can do that with, which allows the claws to again have a pretty nice, fairly sharp look to them, which is also really, really nice. So the D-Rex itself is fantastic, and without a doubt, one of the best minis I think I've seen from Mattel so far when it comes to just its overall quality. That thing is fantastic. We also have the Ceratosuchops, and again, pretty much the same as the larger figure, just at a much smaller size. I'm really happy to see this one, though, actually get a mini, because I just did not expect it at all. Like, it was only a Wild Roar figure, and it only came out one time, and that was it. And then it was on its merry way into obscurity again. And you can see we actually did get a pretty cool mini out of it. Again, same pretty much sculpt as the larger one, just at a much smaller size. The detail's pretty decent on this, but maybe not as crisp as some of the other minis have been. Also, specifically, like when it comes to the yellow paint, I feel like it's a little bit thick when it comes to its application. Like, it just seems super intense. But again, we primarily have a black for the face, and then as we move back, you do have some of that black kind of striping and patterning through, and then it starts to do so again as you move into the back, and then basically that black overtakes the rest of the body moving out through the tail. You can even see some of like those injuries and stuff, like the original Ceratosuchops had kind of like scars and injuries and stuff throughout, and you can see that is present on the mini version as well, which of course is really cool. And the eye is painted, which is shocking. A lot of the minis don't usually have painted eyes, but the Ceratosuchops actually does, which is definitely nice. But that one is a really cool figure. Unfortunately, it's super small, since a lot of the newer minis, again, are really small. Then we have the Spiclypeus, which again is fantastic when it comes to its overall sculpt and fine detail. This one actually looks better, in my opinion, than the Ceratosuchops. Like, it's really vibrant. Again, we do have coloration for the eyes, which is really nice to see. I wish they'd put a little more effort into these, kind of like the Captives line does for their minis, because they are just so impressive when it comes to the sculpt. And again, could just look so much nicer if it didn't have such lackluster paint. But again, it is one of those figures that would definitely be worth repainting. And I did repaint a whole bunch of minis years ago, but I am so tempted to actually give some of these newer minis a shot, because I feel like they've never been more crisp when it comes to the detail than they are now. Like, look at the skin texture and the musculature and everything as you move through. Even the quills on the back of the dinosaur look so nice. We have a dark green for the primary head area, and then as we move back, that green kind of trails off up here into the back and then disappears. And then, of course, no other coloration as you move out other than this light tone, which is the primary body color. But The Spiclypeus, again, is gorgeous. And, you know, it's nice to see these minis having much better proportions as well. Like, of course, when it comes to something like this, we've never really had that problem when it comes to quadrupedal dinosaurs, when it comes to, like, crazy wonky proportions. But even with the Ceratosuchops, like, the feet look so much better. There was a time when we would get feet like this on our minis. Look at how much better they look now. Like, the feet on that Parasaurolophus were gigantic. They're just so much nicer as far as their proportions go now on the minis as well. Now, when it comes to the T-Rex, and I'm actually quite surprised by this, there is definitely some difference between this and the one that you get in the multi-packs. And you may even notice it just looking at the figure here. First of all, the primary gray, although very similar, is a slightly different shade. Same deal with the coloration here for the lower jaw that moves down into the throat. It is also a slightly different shade of color. But the thing that is most obvious to me is just how vibrant the detail is on it. Because if you actually look at the new mini from the main line of minis compared to the multi-pack version, like the skin texture moving through is so much more vibrant on the multi-pack version. And then when you bring this one in, like, you almost can't even see that injury there in the face. Everything just looks so kind of like muddy and almost like muted and just sloppy looking when it comes to the fine detail of this new mini T-Rex compared to the multi-pack version. Like, look, when you look over here, I don't know why, but the detail just shines so much nicer on the older one. On the multi-pack version, it just looks so much higher quality than this new version. Even in the head, when you look at the two, again, the head of the older one is just so much better looking, and like you could almost not even really make out any skin texture on the newer one. The newer one almost looks like a bootleg compared to the older one, which is actually pretty crazy. You know, other than that, you know, everything's the same as far as the pose and everything, but when it comes, actually, is it the same when it comes to the striping? Again, slightly different tones of color, but the striping looks pretty close. There is also like some red speckles that I'm seeing on this one. Like, you can see a little bit there. I did see more over here on the other side. You could definitely see them popping up here and there. I don't know what that's about. And a little bit more here in the neck. So there is some random like red speckles on this one that is not found on the older multi-pack version. But by far, I prefer the multi-pack version because the detail just looks so much nicer. And when it comes to the new version of the Spino from the mainline minis compared to the multi-pack version, again, it's exactly the same case. You can see that the fine detail is just super muddy and just not very good on the newer one compared to the older one. This is the multi-pack version here, and you can just see how much more crisp all of the detail is on the figure. The paintwork is also, again, slightly different when it comes to the shades of color. The yellow is a little bit lighter on the newer one compared to the darker yellows on the older one, as well as the brown is, again, just ever so slightly different as far as its shade goes. But the most concerning part to me, again, is just how different the detail looks on one to the other. Again, the newer version from Mattel is just like not very good when it comes to how the detail looks. Like, look at how nice the scales pop, focus camera, in the stomach on the older one, which is the further away one, compared to the newer one. That's crazy. I don't know what happened when it comes to these figures, but obviously there is a drastic decline in quality when it comes to the Spino and Rex, at least for this first wave. I don't know if that'll continue on moving through, but definitely a decline in quality here when it comes to these figures and, you know, the T-Rex and Spino from this wave. But that's pretty much all we've got when it comes to these guys. I don't think we really need to do like sizes or anything like that. You can see the minis are pretty much the same size that they usually are. The biggest difference here would be the size of the D-Rex, which is quite a bit larger than everyone else, which is of course nice to see. I guess I could technically measure the D-Rex if you were really curious, but for a length from the head to the tail, about 4¼ inches, maybe a little bit over, approaching 4.5, but not quite, or about 11 centimeters on the dot. And then for a height just shy of 2 inches or 5 centimeters. And that's really, again, about all I think we need to do for these figures. Again, it is a pretty cool round of minis. I am really happy to see the D-Rex finally getting a mini, especially one that looks as nice as this one does, because it is gorgeous. by far one of the nicest sculpted D-Rex that you will find anywhere. Mattel really did a great job on their D-Rex in every version they've released so far. And the Ceratosuchops and Spiclypeus are also really nicely done. Gorgeous sculpts on both of those. The fine detail on the Ceratosuchops isn't quite as nice as I would expect, but still looking pretty decent. The Spiclypeus is fantastic, extremely vibrant detail. And then you also have the T-Rex and Spino from Rebirth finally getting their mainline mini appearance here, but unfortunately both are really lackluster and nowhere near the quality of the previous versions, which is quite sad, but they still are okay for what they are, and again, nice to see them finally entering the mainline minis from Mattel. So if you are interested, my buddy Luke found these at, I believe, Walmart, so make sure you head to Walmart, keep checking back if they don't have them yet. They should hopefully have them sometime soon, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.